over so it's above the embroidery. So it's going to look strange for a minute while I rearrange the camera. Hang on. Let's see. I can turn it around. Here I go. Wendy, can you see that now?
I can, yes.
All right, good.
All right, I'm going to pin that video.
Okay. Okay. Well, I thought we would start just with a little show and tell. First of all, I think a really important thing on embroidery is that you have a doodle rag. And my I have several doodle rags. They're just the, muslin or whatever scrap fabric you've got that you can play around with. I know artists usually have a journal or something that they draw little pictures in, but what I have, and I think a lot of embroiderers have, are doodle rags. So that's what I'm going to be working with a bit today. And my plan, that makes sense.
Well, no, it really does. I'm sure you come up with some really interesting stitches that way.
Yes, because if you play on the doodle rag, it doesn't matter. In fact, you can see on this one all the things that didn't work. And rather than taking them out, which I could, even though it doesn't matter, I want to be able to remember what didn't work.
Sure.
So I'll just go back and do it again, and then I remember, oh yeah, that didn't work. So I want to show you some stitches on the doodle rag, and then I'll show you on the piece I'm working on how those stitches translate into what I've been making here. So that's the plan. I'll show you this one, and then I also have this one is finished. And these are journal covers. So we'll talk a little bit about how those come together.
It looks like it's kind of a cross between a collage and what do you call it?
It's like quilting, like piecing.
Yes, I lost the term for a minute, but yeah, quilting and collage. It's a collage of quilting and
it is very much that. And I just like I think that the fabric sometimes tells you what the stitch, on it. And if it's a blank piece, like a blank canvas here, you can do just kind of whatever you want to with it. So that's the general idea. I did want to show you though that I do this freeform on other things as well. You probably have seen this little guy on my website, on my face. This is the Velveteen Rabbit. He's been loved, and he tries to become real, and you can see it's applique, but then it's just the freeform stitches on burlap all along in there. So I've done that. I've also liked to do this freeform on woven pieces. So this is a little woven thing, and then I came back and embroidered. You can see it better really on.
I like that.
Yeah. Well, and you weave, and then particularly if your weaving doesn't come out exactly like you hoped, you can cover it up.
That makes so much sense. Yeah.
So that's what I do. So anyway, there's a couple of other things. And then my friend Zana, I don't think is on here right now, but she sent me this, and I don't know that you can even see. She has tiny, tiny little stitches all over these flowers, and the white are her stitches. So the fabric told her, sort of sent her a message what she should do with it. So look at the leaves too. I don't know if you can see the detailed stitches. The leaves were part of the fabric, but she embellished them with that. So there's all sorts.
Yeah, it really does make it pop a little bit more,
Yeah.
doesn't it?
Yes. All right, so we're going to start today with couching, which is not an unusual embroidery term. With couching, you have a laid thread, which I'm using this pink thread, and then you have a working thread. And the different thing that I've done with it right now is that my laid thread is yarn. So that gives it more of a dimension than if it was just another color of embroidery thread. So when you're couching, you've laid your thread down, and then you have your second thread, your working thread, and you just take a stitch right over it. Y'all tell me when I get out of range where you can see.
No, so far so good.
Okay, good. And then you just go a little ways, and you bring your needle up, and you have another go at it for the couching.
Couching? Is that what you called it?
Couching, yes. I meant to show you I have little cheat sheets. It's called couching, and that is a traditional embroidery stitch. Some of you know me well enough to know that I wouldn't want to do anything too traditional. I had to change it up. So my changing up here is just the fact that I'm using the yarn instead of the embroidery thread. So you can see that. And I want to show you where that is on a finished piece. You can see it right here. This blue is a piece of yarn, of variegated yarn. And instead of bringing it up through the fabric, I tied a knot in each end. And that made it a little easier to work with rather than bringing a heavy thread through the fabric. And then the couching is difficult to see, but it's done in green. So this is exactly what I was showing you on the doodle rag there.
Yes.
Can you see them?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. Now, another form of couching that I just discovered, or I think I made it up. I hate to take credit for something when it's somebody else's. You never know what has made you think in a certain way. But anyway, I'll show you this other form. It's again, couching over the yarn, but I wanted to do a shape. So I brought the yarn up through the fabric, and I'm going to go down close to it, but not exactly the same hole it came out of. You can see, and it's hard to get through. I do use my trusty pliers sometimes to pull it through there. But anyway, we have this, and now we can manipulate it into whatever form we would like to with the couching. So the other thread that I have right here is just plain sewing thread. And I'm going to come up from underneath, and I'm going to anchor the thread as in couching, but I'm not doing it.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, couching can be decorative and functional as far as making the shape you want.
Right. So at least that's what I'm trying. I'm just going to do a circle. And I've gone quite a ways over here. This is not a very close couching, and it's not my intent with this thread for it to show. It's just, let me move that. It's just anchoring it where I want it. Like that. I'm going to do about one more over here.
Except we can't see you.
You can't see me?
There we go. There we go. Okay. I mean, I can see what you're doing. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Kathy. Now can you see?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, good. So we've got this couched into an odd shape.
I can't see it again. All right.
There you go. All right. So here we are with this thread that we have put in place by couching it. And now I'm going to take an embroidery thread and cover it up. So I think it might make more sense if I show you the one that's finished. This heart, can you see that? Okay, this heart was done with this particular method, which I'm loosely calling couching. I wanted the heart to be raised, so I anchored it with the sewing thread, as I've done with this one. And then I came back and went over it solidly with a piece of yarn. So here we are back, and here I've got the blue yarn, and I'm simply going to cover it up. Not blue yarn, blue floss. And I'm going along and, sorry, I have to move it when I work with it. Just moving along and covering up the yarn with the embroidery floss, so that, and not doing a very good job of it, by the way, but you can see what the purpose is, to cover the yarn with the couching, so that in the end, and I need to be somewhat closer together, but you can see what's happening. Okay. And I would go all the way around that with the embroidery floss until I'm back where I started. And what you end up with then is a satin stitch shape, rather than with couching, it's often just a straight line like that. So that's a variation. Do you have any questions about that one? Anybody? Nope. Okay. Now, the other one I wanted to show you, which really isn't necessarily couching, but I think it goes along with this idea of having sort of a straight piece of yarn, or a straight, in this case, a straight stitch. For this particular one, let's see if I can show you where I've used that. Okay, this is real hard to see. Let me just do one. I think you'll see it better. For this particular one, I've done a green, light green back stitch, and then I'm coming up with a red embroidery floss, because I wanted to show you how to do this. And this is just basically a weaving technique where I've come under the thread and I'm not going through the fabric, and under the next back stitch, and under the next back stitch, I'm still not going through the fabric. Looks like a candy cane, sort of. Under the back stitch, and so again, we're not ever catching the fabric. It's just weaving under and along. And then you anchor it at the end when you're finished. But that makes kind of an interesting look, I think.
Like that one.
Yeah, that one is it's fun to do, and I've done it a variety of ways. I thought I had a better example of this. There is some of it done. Here it is. I knew I did it. The blue, I've got two different shades of blue, and let me get this out of the way. I've run them along side by side to make more of an effect. And then the darker blue has been the round and round sort of a stitch there. So that one makes sense?
Raises it and seems to give it just a little bit more pop.
It does give it some dimension. And the one that wanted you to see is more delicate, is this stem is done in one color of green, and then I've gone around with the other color of green. And that's
That
real
one
hard.
there.
Yeah, this one right here. It's hard to see in the green, but that's how it's done. So that's kind of a fun one.
Cool.
The other thing I'll mention in terms of sort of a couching type thing is that you can do it with beads. You can
Oh, yes, of course.
So this little guy has been made with a size 8 bead. I tried it with larger bead and it just looked too chunky. So in order to do this one, I think you can see it better on this doodle cloth. I just strung the beads, came up with the thread, strung the beads, went down with the thread. And
So
then
that they're hanging. Okay.
They're hanging there.
Yeah.
And back and couched in between each bead.
Interesting. Yeah.
So that's kind of a fun one to
Yes,
try
definitely.
too. And the beads, you know, you could do any shape with the beads because you're going to couch them and hold them in place. So those were kind of fun. If Della, if you're listening, I know you've got a bunch of beads that would work for that particular thing. So any questions about that one? About the bead one?
No, ma'am.
Nope. Okay. Well, let me move on here. Then the next one I wanted to show you. Let's see, those of you who embroider might know how to do a woven flower, sometimes called a rose. Kathy, is that one that you've done before?
I don't know. I have a question. I know I came a little bit late. I had getting on. That hoop that you had looked really interesting.
Oh.
Did you over the hoops already?
No, I haven't.
Oh, okay.
I just dived right in.
Okay.
This or the other one?
That one?
This hoop, I think, might have been my grandmother's.
Okay. We don't get those anymore. Huh?
I don't think so, but isn't it neat? It's a spring mechanism. And I think it's much easier than, and this one's old too, so I don't know what you get now.
That's the kind I'm used to having.
And it bothers my fingers. I like this spring.
That spring one. Okay, so.
Cool. So
yeah.
I don't know if they make those anymore or not, but I have 2 little bitty ones, so they're not leaving. All right. So let me pull this thread down and see if I'll have enough thread. This is a woven flower, or I call it a spoke flower. And you might see it in the literature or on YouTube as a rose. So you can make it any size you want to. And I've gone ahead and started with the spokes just to save us a little time. You can see I've got 5 spokes just coming out from the middle. And then we're going to go back and weave. The learning that has occurred for me is that it has to be an uneven number of spokes. If you have an even number of spokes, this doesn't work. So let me show you how it goes. I've come up with the floss, and it normally would be the same color as your spokes, but I wanted you to be able to see it. And I'm going to go, this is weaving too. I'm not going to get into the fabric at all. I'm just going to go under and over the spokes. So I'm going over the first spoke, under, and I'll have to keep turning it, over.
Okay. Over and under.
Under. You want to get under all of them if you can. So you don't want your spokes too tight. Okay. And over. And when I get back to here, then I'm under, which is the opposite of what it was previously. See how that's doing? So I'm just over, under.
Of course.
over. And I'm going to go a little farther. Let me get this pink thread out of our way. Okay. All right. So I'm continuing around, and I'm going to go until you can kind of get a feel for what's happening here. You see how it's beginning to make the flower? No. Over, under. Kathy, are you seeing this one?
I like that one. I've never seen that before.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Over,
I think
under.
when you're done, if you lay it down, it comes into focus more after you've finished, then we can get a better look at it.
All right. Well, I'm going to lay it down for a second then. You can see the little purple, and you can see it forming there like that. And if you're making a big flower, sometimes I have to kind of keep it pressed down so it doesn't loop on top of each other. But I'm going to go a little bit farther with this. Over and under. And over and under. And over and under. And the cool thing is your spokes don't even have to be particularly even because they all get covered up. And there we go again. See how it's come raising and giving you a nice dimension there. And you just go until you're at the end of the spokes, which is what happened here with the brown one. I just kept going until I had covered all of the spokes. And then it was done. Now I'll show you how that looks on a finished piece. Let's see. This one, I left a little spoke out there so you could see. And then I went back and put a knot of yellow yarn in the center for that one. And then here's one that was a screw up. Oh, I'm not supposed to say that in creative thinking, am I? This one that did not turn out as expected. You can see that one spoke was considerably longer than the other spokes right here.
That's just a stem.
Well, that's what I thought. So at first I thought, well, I'll make it into a leaf, don't you think? But then I decided to just leave. I better quit with that pencil or I'll have pencil on my thing. To just leave it like this and leave the other spokes showing. And I think it just looks fine. So I'm okay with that one. So there's one right here. Oh, I wanted you to just see this one. This one's fun. This one, can you see the black and red one?
Yes.
It doesn't really look like the others because I used 3 different colors in the weaving. I wove with the yellow, and then I wove with the red, and then I wove with the black, and then the green, so that you've got all these colors. In the midst of adding threads, some of the yellow thread came popping up through the middle. And I thought about trying to put it back down, and then I thought, no, that's kind of cool looking.
It is.
So I just left it. It's almost like an amoeba. I just left it
Happy
there.
accidents.
Yes, it is. So I kind of like the way that particular one. Now, the one I want to show you next. Oh, there's another little flower that I left the spokes on. There, you see that one too.
No.
And then here's a big blue heart that was done with the couching as well. So, okay, so you see how to do the flower. I hope you'll try that one. That's one of my favorite ones to do. I do want to tell you one funny thing that I learned. You can see this particular one that I started. And I thought, well, if 5 spokes look this way, I'll just double my spokes and it'll be extra special. Well, if you double, this is an odd number of spokes, just like I need, but it didn't work because when you double an odd number, it becomes an even number. So I was going over, under, over, under, over, under. And then when I got back here, I needed to go over, and I'd already been over that one. So that's just a little hint there. that one was an interesting thing, and I'm still playing with what that might be. I think if you wanted to do this half flower and you wanted 6 weavings right here, that you could go back down in the fabric and back up and start again.
And those kind of look like leaves, you know, especially if it had been in green, you know, that could be a leaf under.
It could be. Do y'all know how to make those little petals? I bet you do know how.
So what if you have an even number like that, could you sort of like skip over and then change it? Do you see what?
Well, I challenge you to figure. I challenge you to figure that out. What would make the difference?
All right.
Let's try it, because that's an interesting idea, Kathy.
Well,
Here we go.
I don't know. I'm just.
Well, you're not supposed to know if you're thinking creatively and you're thinking this is what I say to myself. In what ways might I use these spokes? How, you know, I always say that. In what ways might I, or I say, when I'm happy with what I did, how many ways can I do this? How many different ways? So let's try it. Let's see what happens. So I'm going to go, I've come up through the fabric, over, under, over, under, over, under. Right, so here I am back. Now, I'm ready to go over again. But Kathy, you said just kind of skip it.
Oh, under instead. I don't know.
Did.
Yeah, 2 unders in a row.
Yeah, let's see what that does.
I don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Under, over, under. Go away. I'm probably making you dizzy. Over, under. I believe you're on to something. What do you think?
Well, I'm not stitching it. You are, but does it work?
You're directing, right?
Well, I mean, you know, we're just playing around, right?
Right, we are. All right, so here I am, and I can do like we went over that time, so I'm going to go under again, under, and we'll see what happens.
So you're going under 2?
Mm-hmm.
You're going under.
I'm going from here. I went under this one, this little guy,
Right.
and then over here and went under the another little guy. But I've made this into 6 spokes rather than 5.
Right. Okay.
So I'm going in that little flower petal or that leaf petal, as Wendy said. I'm going like this. So it's an interesting look, I think. The other way that I've done it, and I'll show you that right quick, is to combine these 2 strands of that petal, is to make them into one, over, and then over the, and that makes it nice and fat as well.
Yeah, you get more.
You get more oomph there. So anyway, that's a thought that you might do. Actually, I think this little guy, I think that he was done that way because I have a double thread right here. So I think that was one that I I ended up putting those strands together, you know. But Wendy, you mentioned those could be leaves.
Yes.
You could just go back and instead of doing the weaving with them, you could just couch them with some thread.
Each line of the, yes.
Right. Yeah, and just keep them, you know, that particular way. Okay.
One of those kind of reminded me, instead of a rose, almost like a bird's nest with eggs in the middle.
Oh, that would be good. So
you know, that would be easy to do.
Yeah. What would you put in there for the eggs?
Well, just build up, you know, I mean, I don't know how you do a little circle, you know?
Do you know how to do a knot, a French knot?
Yes, a knot, probably.
So you could do a French knot in your bird's nest in a couple of, you know, different colors and have that there. You might also want your bird's nest to be a little looser, maybe not
Yeah,
quite.
I was gonna, but rough up the edges a little.
Yeah, you could do that quite nicely. I think that's a good idea. Okay, so y'all can play around with that. We've got the couching, and then we've got the woven spoke flower that we've done. The other one that I want to show you is done with loops. And this may not float your boat at all, but I've had the best time going loopy, making a bunch of loops and using some different tools for making the loops. And for this one, I'm going to show you what they look like first. Okay, these are loops that I've made the way I'm going to show you. Okay, there's got some ones and some little messy ones. I've got some blue ones over here. Some of them have space in them. Some of them are all closed up, but they're all done in a similar way. And I will tell you that I had to practice this morning because it doesn't come easy to me how to do these. So we'll see if I can make it work. I am going to have to stop and thread a needle though, so hang on just for a second while I do that. For this one, I found out this morning that if I use beeswax, you know, like you use on sewing thread, for one thing, it makes it easier. This is my beeswax. It makes it easier to thread your needle. And I just run it through the beeswax as best I can. It helps the strands stick together. And I can't get the beeswax to the very end ever, so I just cut it off where I have beeswax. And sometimes that helps with the threading of the needle. Sometimes it doesn't. You know, spitting is really a good thing.
I spit all the time.
Good. All right, there we go. Okay. You know, saliva, I think saliva must be a little bit sticky. There's a technique that we use in metalsmithing called granulation, and you use saliva to help it do its thing. So there you go. All right, loops. Let's get loopy here. Put these needles away. And for the loops, I'm going to use something to make them a little bit more uniform than what I usually do. I'm not always real precise, but I want to I can use this to make some loops. I can use knitting needles to make some loops, and I'll show you how that goes. Della, if you're still on, this is a kebab stick. Bigger than
okay.
This could be too little. This is a double-pointed knitting needle, but you know, it doesn't have to be double-pointed. It can just be a knitting needle. I'm going to use this because it may be easier to see. I'm going to come up from the bottom like this. And then just as you would wrap thread around your needle to make a French knot, instead I'm going to wrap it around this needle. I'm going to go 3 times for right now and snug it up a little. I'd like for it to be right close there. Now the thread has ended up over here, so I've got to come back to the other side of it, and I'm going to fit the needle in, I hope. Yeah, there we go. Under all of those threads. There we go. And it's gotten away from me. So then we're going to start again. I thought you might need to see wrapping the needle twice. 1, 2, 3, and don't wrap too tight. There it is. Slide it towards the end. Come back to the other side. Put the needle through all of those, if you can. There we go. You see what, there. Okay, and I've still got it held down. I'm going to go back through the bottom. I know you can't see this. Back through the bottom of it to anchor it. And we end up with a mess. Let's try it again. You see why I had to practice this morning. All right, here we go again. If you don't have a sense of humor, it's hard to be creative. 1.
Indeed.
1, 2, 3. All right. I've got 3 loops on there. I'm going through with my needle. This one's going to be better. Okay, so I've come through with my needle. I'm going to go down close to the same hole and back down. I know you can't see me. Back down with the needle. There. And then pull the needle out. And what you end up with now.
Nice.
See why I had to practice? It's difficult to get it when it's on the needle and wrap, to get your needle all the way through all of them. But there is
taking it all apart. Yeah.
Right, right. So I call this the inner tube loop because you can come up just like a tube would be, and you can put some little handles on it if you want to hold it down. Okay. Just like we did with the couching for the shape. So we're holding it down like that. I'm going to come up one more time like this. I could have used a nicer color. And back down. And then your circle is held in place. Let's see how that looks. I hoped that you could see it best. This was a large knitting needle. So that's a large circle. And then I anchored it with a different color thread. So you can see what happens there. These at the bottom are the tiny kebab stick, the circumference of it. And they went round and round the kebab stick, and then I anchored them. And if you want them to be messy, then you can use sort of different sizes going around the needle. Don't be real precise, and pull it so that it's they're all even. I kind of like the messy flowers there as well. So that's how that particular one works. It's easier for me to get it to slide off. It wasn't today, but it usually is. To slide off of the...
That's because people were watching.
Well, I don't know. You never know.
Yeah.
To off the knitting needle, the way it's shaped, then it's a little harder, I felt like, with the kebab needle. It may just be because it's smaller, but I had more difficulty getting it off of the kebab needle than I did the other one. So
But
does that fit?
was smoother also, like slicker.
Yes, yes, and which is a wonderful thing. So when I started going around looking for things that would be suitable, I tried all sorts of things. I tried the pencil, and when you point the point of the pencil down, it makes a mark on your fabric. So that did go well. That was a learning. Then I did the eraser. The eraser isn't bad, but it's real hard to slide it off. You know, it kind of sticks to it. I tried a pen, and this isn't bad either because it's slick too. So you just have to go by whatever size you think is going to work for what you want to do, and then try it on your doodle rag first and see, you know, what happens. So you can see how I've used it for the flowers. I want to show you one other one. This one right here, you see the red one with the yellow? Mm-hmm. This one I did that way, but I went around numerous times. And then once I got it off and anchored, I came back and anchored it on top with a contrasting color, which gave it a whole different look. Yes. From what I had on the others. And I thought that was kind of fun to do there. So any questions about that? What do you think we should call that stitch?
Slip off. Okay.
Slip off. That's a good one. Okay. Let's do the slip off. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Okay. I'll buy that. Good job.
Sounds like something you do when you get home from work.
It does. It certainly does. Well, I will tell you that when you're doing the slip off, you don't think about anything else. It's very
no, yeah, I can see you have to concentrate on that.
Really do. Okay, if you don't have questions about that one, then I'd like to take just a minute and show you about the patchwork. It's probably obvious, but hey, I got it ready. I want to show it to you. So there you go. When I'm doing a journal cover, and I'll get one of them out. I think you probably saw a journal cover on the write-up. And this is just a composition book. You can get them at Dollar General for $1, you know, too, or you can make them any size. But what I wanted you to see was that the embroidered piece is put on. You see the edge there? It's put on the fabric that covers the journal. I have one ready. This red one, there's the embroidered piece, is ready to go on this fabric, which will cover the journal. So before I sew the journal cover, I will figure out placement here. And you see how that works? You just put it on there, and you can either whip it by hand, or you can fuse it if you want to fuse it, or you can just stitch it on the sewing machine. And then you go in.
Excuse me, when you say fuse, do you mean like glue it?
No, what is the fusible interfacing that fuses both sides? We use it in applique, and you fuse it to one side of one fabric, and then you peel something off and you can fuse it to the other side.
Okay, so, I wasn't aware of that.
Well, I'm not thinking of the name. I've used it long ago making little girls' clothes. But anyway, that's how you put it together. When I'm planning a patchwork, I know that my journal covers, that the patchwork part needs to be roughly 8.5 by 11. So I cut, I'm going to use this as a pretend piece of fusible sizing. Fusible sizing, I'll show you on the back of this, is something very light that is only sticky on one side when you iron it. So I usually cut my 8.5 by 11 piece of fusible sizing, and then I decide on my colors. And one of my favorite things to look at, I can find it here. Here it is. I get these charms pack from my daughter. My daughter has a fabric place. And these come, I mean, just use your scraps. You don't need these as a silly, but these come in all sorts of cute prints that go together. I mean, they're usually a color theme, you know, that you can do. So I generally just get a few of these out, and I usually get a solid color as well. And I play around with the 8.5 by 11 piece of fusing. I lay it on the iron board with the sticky side up, and then I begin. Usually I've cut these. I'm not going to cut these today, but I just begin kind of laying them around. I've got one odd one here that, so you can see this one's cut. And I just lay them around until I pretty well get the 8.5 by 11 covered. It's collage, Kathy. It's just like what you
Fabric collage.
Fabric collage, exactly.
Collage. Kathy's our expert on paper collage. So you do your fabric collage, and once you're happy with it, then you put the steam iron on it and you adhere it to the sizing that you've got. And a funny thing happened on my way to doing one of them. I turned the sizing the wrong way, and I picked my piece up thinking they'd all be stuck together, and the sizing was stuck to the ironing board. So I would just warn you to be sure that you're going the right direction with your sizing. Now, once you have the sizing, had it steamed down, you're going to have edges that are raw. And I left this one to show you because this is a top. Oh, you can't see that. This is a top, the green checked. See the blue? Okay, and it's loose there. So it can't be caught by the fusing because it's on top of the other one. So I've got to come back there and zigzag it with the sewing machine there. Now something has happened over here on the other side of it. I was planning to do the same thing, but as you'll see when I lift it up, it's kind of gotten a little hole there. So to correct that, I would take a little piece of fabric, put it behind here, and zigzag. And then you've got it anchored with this fabric because you can't stitch to nothingness there. So that's how I take care of that little problem.
Or you could even embroider over it to anchor it down.
Yes, you can. And
right?
if you don't mind the little bit of raveling that comes with that.
Oh, there is the raveling.
Well, I don't know, Wendy. I think either way, it's just a matter of what look are you getting,
right?
Wanting to get with it. You can see on the edge here where I have zigzag just to hold it all together. You can see the raveling. So you want to be right on the edge if you are just going to do it that way. Which brings me to a question. Why in the world did I zigzag all around the edge? And it's
to keep
because,
it. Oh, go ahead. No, that was a rhetorical question.
Well, don't ask a question for which you won't listen for the answer. What were you going to say, Wendy?
You go ahead.
I wanted to keep it in place. And sometimes even with the fused, it'll get up and wander away. So I just sort of helped it.
You go.
The other thing I want to be aware of is that when I get to place it on the fabric for the composition book, it's not going to go all the way to the edge because the book is smaller than what I cut. Now, I've tried cutting it exactly the right size, and as you likely know, when you embroider, it draws it up a little bit. And so you lose some of your yardage with the embroidery and the embellishment. So I would suggest always cutting your piece an inch all the way around larger than what you want to finish up with. And it could be, this is the size of my picture frame, or this is the size of the pocket that I'm putting on my dress, or the yoke, or just kind of whatever you want to be using in there for it. So that's kind of how I piece it together. But the deal is, if it works for you, it was right. It's not. Now, how did she say to do that? Don't worry about that. Just try it for yourself. And, how might, keep asking that question, in what ways might I, how might I do that? I don't remember how we did it. How might I do it? And if it turns out okay for you, that's great. If it's not what you want, then you hopefully you did it on the doodle cloth first. And
then you call Karen and ask for advice.
Well, I've I used to teach jewelry making classes, and I'm going to turn my camera around. And I have had a few calls. Funniest one was the pair of my students who were in Wimberley who had taken the torch class, and they got their torches on and they did their work and did just fine, and then they didn't know how to turn the torches off. So they decided they could pull the torches out the car windows and drive to my house.
Oh
and
my
I would
God.
say, so I think embroidery would be a lot easier to help someone with. Okay. Does anybody have any more questions? We're just about out of time.
Yeah, I gotta go. Thank you. Thank you so much. That was fun.
Kathy, it was fun to see you. Bye-bye. Christine, are you there?
I am. Thank you so much. This was great, Karen.
Everything too.
Yeah.
I think they're good thinkers.
Yeah. No, it's great. I love when artists are able to empower other people to just play, right? Like, I think that's really important.
I think it's very important. I think that was probably one of my hang-ups for a long time.
Yes.
Hello. Yes, it is. It's a hang up trying to create the perfect masterpiece. And that's such pressure. And that's an exaggeration, of course, but playing is fun.
Yeah, what you're saying, Wendy. And I used to have a quote on my desk that said, it doesn't matter if it's pretty as long as you had fun and thought and did some good creative. That's all.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
What was pretty last night looks pretty good this morning.
Well, that's great. Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your, sharing your time with us and your skills. We'll, like I've said to folks before, this will all be on our Vimeo page for the San Marcos Art League. So, and there's others we've done too. So go check those out. There's some fun ones there.
There are some.
Yeah, it's been great. There's so many amazing artists in this community. We are so lucky to have that.
Yeah. And most of us do 10 different things.
Of course. Yes. Yes.
Hosting me.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Bye.